Now, it's time for me to introduce somebody who I am in love with her energy. I am in love with just how amazing she is and how she has encouraged so many superstars that we know today. I would like to just say, oh, I love you. With that being said, KJ Rose is affectionately known as the Talent Whisperer. She is a powerful change agent with real-world experience working for Clive Davis and performing with P. Diddy, Justin Timberlake, Carl Thomas, Britney Spears, and Janet Jackson, and delivers real-world results to young creatives like Lil Nas X. Her creative density and infectious energy that companies such as Google, Pandora Media, OWN TV, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel find her compelling and deemed to be the ultimate solution for their talent. So get ready. Pick up your pen and your pad. It's time to launch those passion projects that have been sitting on your to-do list. Get ready to bloom, honey. Bloom where you are planted with the beautiful, the infectious KJ Rose.
Come on.
There she go. There she go. I don't think I've ever met anybody that has amazing energy as you.
Come on. Yay!
Hey, good girl. Hey.
Hey. All right. I just had to start it like that.
I love it.
You gotta get to the I like what I see. Because that's what this is all about. Liking what you see. Come on. Get it. Here we go. Hey! Hi, everybody. I see you. Get it. We gonna move. Good morning. My name is Kiana KJ Rose Henson. We'll talk about how we switch that up later. I'm from Chicago. I've lived in New York for many years. I went to school at FAMU. And I landed in LA a couple of years ago. But just to give you a little bit about my backstory, I ended up just performing first. I loved singing, but there was something about my body that had this adverse reaction to performance. So I was like, I had this level of stage fright that just did not add up to the level of passion that I had for performing, but I knew I had to work it out. I knew that it was something that I wanted to do. And so very early on, while living in New York, kind of my first moment of committed courage, because that's really what it's about. Like you could, a lot of us aren't born with it. A lot of us, it's a case-by-case basis, but sometimes you have to choose courage, even if the rest of you has not caught up yet. You have to jump and trust that your mind and trust that your emotions will catch up with your decision to walk into courage. And a lot of that is mental, making those mental notes. And one thing I do want to say is that we've all been in the midst of layered trauma, right? We've had levels of emotions that we've never encountered before, whether it was feeling mighty, but at the same time feeling muted, or feeling empowered, but then also powerless and hopeless and helpless. And so I believe that in order to move forward, we have to find resolution. We have to resolve those emotions. And so it may take you to identify with your force and have a level of courage to push through even when you don't feel good. So my first thing that I jumped into while I was in New York was the Apollo. Ambitious for me, but I knew that that God had given me this assignment, I believe, as a singer at that time. And I really wanted to push through in it. And I think a lot of times we believe if we're not born with this natural gift, then it's not part of our assignment, right? But there's some things we may just have to work at. It doesn't mean that we weren't gifted and we weren't assigned to it. It just means we have to work a little bit more for it. And I don't believe I was like born into being the singer. There's some people I hear and I'm like, oh, this is the thing for them. They were born into it. They had the family that did it as well. And so for me, I knew that the stage fright existed, and I was determined to make sure that I quieted the voice that was not believing that this was my lot, right? So sometimes we have to do things that quiet the loud voice that says, who do you think you are to be the messenger for this? Who do you think you are to walk in this and to bless other people? And we often forget that people's assignments are connected to ours. So when we don't have the committed courage to walk into it and to at least attempt it, then we are thwarting God's plan. That's what I believe. And so the very first thing I did, I jumped into performing at the Apollo. And the first time I won, I sang this Anita Baker song called Been So Long, I'm missing you, baby. And then they brought back all of the all-stars, all of the people that had won over the weeks. They brought us back. And so there was this girl that had brought an entire busload of people from Maryland. Right. So if there were 8 positions, there were a few people that, as my bow-legged Lou, he was the host, and he was going down each person, and everyone got kind of like the obligatory applause. And so when it got to me, her entire crew, cheerleaders, pom-pom squad, they all booed me. And it was in this moment when number one, I had the stage fright. So I was already shooting and pushing past my normal kind of disposition. So then they get booed, the nerve. So you can only imagine like how I felt. I was crumbling inside while still smiling. And I remember bow-legged Lou saying to me, don't ever give up. This is just entertainment, and it will require you to recover from moments like this, right? And so that was when I had to determine who is the deciding factor, who's deciding for you, whether you continue on this path or whether you continue with your assignment. Is it the people that have no idea about your potential, or is it the whisper that you've already gotten from God? The assignment for me, it was like sometimes people, God doesn't tell everybody what your dreams or what your assignment may be. He only may tell you. Right. And so we've got to figure out how many people we let in on that secret, how we preserve it, how we protect it. And so I knew that was not going to be the deciding factor for me. And so I moved forward and I just kept showing up. Every time someone requested my presence, I kept making sure that I gained enough information from every encounter. There was no encounter too small. Even for me, getting a call to come and meet Kelly Price in the studio at it was late at night, and she never heard me sing. But a week later, she asked if I would go on tour with Puffy. And so what I often tell a lot of my clients is that talent is great, but it's not always what opens the door. Sometimes you got to figure out what else you got, right? So whether that is persistence, whether that is tenacity, whether that is energy, whether that is your smile, I deem that as your force. Your force is the thing about yourself that you love, that you ain't never asking permission to do or to be. That's number one. Your force is that thing that you just illuminate. It's the light that you are. It's the power that you have that has nothing to do with anybody else. And what I figured out very early on is that my force is immeasurable energy. I feel like God has given me arsenals of energy so that when I do work with clients, even if they are depleted of theirs, I've got enough to fuel them. And so I want everybody not to leave here without first identifying your force. And your force at, what time is it? 9:40 may be different than your force at 11 o'clock, right? So figure out what that is. What are you mighty in? What are you moving in? And so that is what took me from being a background singer for many years, which was great, right? My learning curve, it started out really wide, and then after a while it started to diminish, and I had to figure out what is that thing, what is my goal, right? Because now I understood that if you are in a space, in a season that God already moved you from, you're holding on for dear life, and you can't get nothing else out of that. And so for me, I knew that I was starting to hide. No longer was I moving and collecting knowledge and being a background singer, which was a great ride while it lasted. But I knew that God was saying, now I need you to take a leap. And so it was those constant pivots in my life. Every time, I think for me, I'm so hard-headed that God backed me into a corner and said, okay, enough is enough, right? I need you to start moving. And so my first, I would say, pivot from being a background singer was to work for Clive Davis at J Records. And I never told him that I sang because I just felt like it was so trite, like to come in and be the singing assistant. But I also wanted to observe. I knew that there was power in observing his every move. If I was going to be there, then I wanted to make the best of being there. And I know that as I couldn't be bitter, right? So for every artist that was walking through, from Alicia Keys to Swizz Beatz to Aretha to you name it, like whoever was signed to Clive at that moment, Jennifer Hudson, every time they walked past my desk as I was seated as the receptionist, because that's how I started. I started as a receptionist at J Records. And after a while, they said, could you work for Clive Davis? Initially, I was like, absolutely not. I like my time. But what I realized was that no matter what area of business I ended up in, the business acumen that I could get from working with him was invaluable. And so instead of being bitter that I was not the artist, and I guess I was just hoping that I would just get discovered while cutting his apples in the kitchen, where I was just like, yeah, and it never happened. And so I don't know what that song was. And so when that didn't happen, I had to say, okay, how can you make this work for you? How can you make this time, this space? How can you bloom where you're planted? How can you make sure that when you walk away that you just didn't give them hours and energy, but you collected nothing in return? So if this is where God has planted you, if this is where he says you need to be, because he's moved you from one space, from one season to the next one, what does that look like for you? And I knew that every time I walked into that door, I had to make a committed, intentional decision to have courage, no matter what it felt like, to make sure that I was at least making space while I was in the assistant position, making space to collect information, making space to just learn more, and to make sure that my presence there was valuable. And so it wasn't until he found out I was going on the road with Janet Jackson that he really understood, oh, this is what she does. And it was so much sweeter that way. But it really helped me to understand that no pivot is lost, right? No time spent in a specific area, if you know that that was an assigned area to you, is ever lost. I think a lot of times we're afraid to make pivots because we believe it discounts the work we've already put in. I was used to activity that I did not, there was no metric system to figure out what was actually productivity. And sometimes you can just get so fatigued and you think you're doing something, but you're not, right? If it's not adding to the tank of getting you closer to your goal, it's just adding to your level of stress and adding to your fatigue, it's time to reassess. And reassessing is smart. It doesn't mean that the work you've done does not count. It merely means that it is time to make progress. And if you see that going in one direction has not served you, nor has it served anybody else, it's time to make a pivot. And so I learned very early on to just embrace. I've had a lot of 9-to-5s, so before I got to the Britney Spears and the Justin Timberlakes and the P. Diddy, I worked at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals by day. And by night, I was in the studio or singing at some open mic. And so I knew that if I was asking someone to sign me as an artist, I had to believe first. That meant I had to put in the hours to get over the stage fright. That if I ran into anybody, they said, sing right now, do what you do. What is your force? What do you walk in? That I wasn't ever asking permission to do it. And so once I realized that, it really helped me to gain the courage and the confidence that I needed to just stand flat-footed and know that I was already put here for a very specific reason. And if you're the one that's saying no, then you ain't the one, right? And so I very early on understood the level of tenacity that I had. I understood that if you're saying no, then that's not a closed door for me. And so I'm always eager to keep pushing and to understand that I am to be a light to somebody. Somebody is waiting somewhere for my message, right? And so that takes me to the book that I wrote. It's called The Rose Effect. It's funny because I was going to say A Guide to Delivering the Performance of Your Life, because that was the first title that when God whispered, I need you to do this book, I was like, that ain't my thing, Lord. And I was like, I'm gonna give you a guide, because guide was more palatable, right? Guide meant that nobody was going to judge me, the coach, as an author. It was safe. And I feel like we're all in spaces that once we get really comfortable in, once we've mastered and conquered, God said, okay, great. Sometimes we just want to sit there and be like, well, I'm doing this thing. He's like, all right, we've done it already. New season time. And if you are attuned, then you will move when he says move. I'm not always attuned, so he has to actually move me aggressively. And so just writing this book, I vacillated between who do you think you are, and God saying, let me tell you who you are, right? And so a lot of times he puts these assignments, or I say assignments a lot because I don't believe that it's our will that takes precedence. And so I'm only moving. It only makes sense when I move forward in his will. And I know that I'm assigned to people. I never count opportunities like this or clients that I get as a number or the quantity of work. I know that I'm assigned to this on this specific day at this time, right? And so so I finally got the memo that he was not asking for a guide. And so the new title is The Rose Effect, 8 Steps to Delivering the Performance of Your Life. And I think it was so hard for me to start because it was something I had never done before, right? It was like I was comfortable with my titles. I didn't want to be judged. And here's the thing, if you ain't being judged, and you ain't doing nothing, right? Because most times the judgment comes because people are inspired by what you do, but it's so heavy on them. It requires them to move in action, but they're not ready yet. And so then it becomes judgment, right? And so when we internalize that judgment, or we don't move forward because of fear of that, we have to know that we've already been pre-approved, right? We've already been qualified for these assignments, for this thing that he put on your heart. And I had no idea that it would be this tangible tool for people. And for me, it was just a matter of, I was traveling to Australia and Ireland, and I just felt like at the end of the workshop, I'm like, all right, I hope it worked out, as opposed to saying, let me give you something that allows you to continue to transform. And I think what happens is we imagine this new goal, this new project of, we start at 0 and then we look at 1,000, right? And so if you're looking at 1,000, nobody wants to do that thing. It's scary, right? But God is just saying, I just need you to start. I need you to get in flight. I need you to take the heavy P off a process, put a light P on it. And process just means do one thing today. Whatever that thing is for you, do one thing today that gets you closer, right? And before you know it, you will have a completed project. And I am you, right? So if I can do it, you can do it. And this was the completed body of work that I didn't realize that during COVID, that so many people would be left uncertain with what their force is, what their lot is, what their goals are. And so we have to, there's been a lot of adjusting, a lot of pivoting, right? And so the interesting point that I'd like to share with you is that at one point there were only 7 chapters. There were only 7 chapters. I was done. I was like, "Whoa, this thing is over. Let's start." And then while working with Lil Nas, we were at Quincy Jones's home because Lil Nas got a diamond plaque presented by Quincy. It was an amazing event. And from there, we all hopped in the Sprinters. We went to Palm Springs so that we could work on the Super Bowl commercial that he was doing with Doritos. And it was great. And then the first day, it was, I'm always stretched in these moments because they're new for me. They were new for him. And so it's a lot of mental and emotional work, right? For me, it's not just you need to be over here on this stage at this point in time or by this camera. It was more like, I need you, let's figure out what you think about yourself, right? Outside of this situation. Let's take that and let's figure out what you think about yourself in this situation and how we can win, how we can make sure that even in the uncomfortable moments of things that you've never done before, how are you pushing through? And so for me, the first day, it was great. The second day, we're dancing in the trailer. We're having us a great time. And then I get a call from my landlord that I had been robbed, that someone had broken in, taken all my stuff, my jewelry, and some electronics. And then but at the same time, as I'm on this call, I see them whisking Lil Nas away back to set. So it was like, I had no time but to run, get myself together and go back to set. But while on set, I'm at the director's camera and I'm yelling at him, "You got this, keep going. That was a good take. Let's do another one." Then they send me the pictures of my home and my knees buckled. So while I'm still encouraging him, I am crying. I'm like, you got this. Keep going, because I knew that if he saw me, he's super intuitive. If he saw me, then it would change and shift his energy, right? So I had to push through and know how to understand the confines of really being present, right? I can't deal with that now. What I can do, because what happens is you lose twice. You lose twice, but whatever that thing is that happened. And then you lose the other time when you're not present where you should be present. And so though tears were falling down, it just was this, it was this paradox of emotions. It was the greatest win I felt like I was experiencing professionally, because I'd never coached him on a commercial and I'd never seen this type of breakthrough. But at the same time, I was being robbed, and it felt just so it was just hurtful and it was painful, because I was like, I ain't got much. Who would take what I have? And so from there, it took me a few days to kind of process, right? And so what I realized was that God had been telling me to move for a really long time, but I would just step out and see what the market was like, and I was like, "Nah, I'm good where I am. This is good. I got just enough." And and I was sounding like someone who was thinking very small, right? So he had elevated me in so many other areas of my life, but this one area, in terms which should be, my sanctuary, I should be coming home to something that makes me feel like I can refuel and refresh, because I am in the service business of pouring out to other people, but that is not what my environment offered me. But I'd lived in New York, and so I was just used to just doing. I was used to the hustle. I was used to the level of struggle, right? So the thing is, sometimes you don't even know that you're existing in varying degrees of mediocrity because you're at the top of the tier. But I knew that God was saying, I need you to be more than mediocre. I didn't make you to be mediocre. I qualified you for something bigger than this. And so he was like, and because you would not move when I told you to move, I'm going to have to move you. And I didn't like the way he did it, but it had to happen. And so what I understood in that moment was that when we're holding on to seasons that no longer serve us, if we can't hear his whispers, because I feel like he gives us like, 5 to 10 whispers along the way, right? And if we don't hear them, then he will, because we are his children, he will aggressively uplift you and put you where you need to be. And I look back on that, and I am grateful for that, that movement, for that, I feel like it was just such a moment for me, because now I realize that it's hard for God to do the work. It's hard when we cut him off at the knees, because we don't see the vision that he has for us when we are operating, because sometimes it's all we know. It's all we know is to be okay with, that's just enough. That'll do. And we ain't that'll do people, right? We are people that were born of love and born of power, and we each got something to contribute, and we cannot leave here without doing so. And so I just want everybody to understand that once you figure out your force and you move in that, you will never, ever have to wonder if where you are planted is where God had put you. I had told you to go into, right? Because you'll know that who's doing the directing. If you're directing yourself, you'll always wonder, right? And so I just want to make sure you understand that you are necessary and that you are light. And I need you to walk in it and operate in it, because somebody is depending on you. All right? Do we got it? All right. Now I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to go to, if anyone has any questions. Oh, someone said this is resonating with my soul. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, thank you. Committed courage. Yes. A commitment is like something you do even if your body don't feel up to it, and know that I still had a little stage fright before I came here, because I feel like this is a responsibility to be able to have your attention and to be able to penetrate your spirits in a way is not something I take lightly. So understand that. And if you guys still want to chat after this, I will roll over to the next session, the chat session. And also want to talk about this book. It's available on Amazon in paperback as well as Kindle version. And it shares anecdotal stories about my life in the entertainment business, as well as in in the professional corporate realm. And so each one gives you just a little bit of an actionable charge, right? You ain't just gonna be reading and be like, I did it. All right. I want you to read and say, how can I walk away from this, understanding that in order to be everything that I was put here to be, that I've got to get some things resolved, right? Because really your external expression is the reconciliation of your internal narrative. So if you ain't figured out why those hurts exist, if you have not unpacked, so that you can be vulnerable with people, and that people, you're not just talking at people, that people understand your story. It is how well can you tell your story in a way that connects? How real can you be in telling that story? Why you, right? Why do you feel like God chose you? And what do you think your walk is supposed to be? That's how you move forward in all that you were put here to do. And so this book is my committed courage, right? Even when I didn't think that I was good enough. I didn't think that I had enough to say. I didn't think that people would read it. I was like, okay, so after you actually do it, you got to put it out. And so I probably would have held on to it for so many years. But, here's the thing. You've got to trust that if he gave you the words, if he gave you that thing, if he put it in your heart, it ain't your job to figure out where it will land. It's not your job to figure out how people will receive you. It is your job to complete the assignment and trust that it will land safely. And if you're doing it from the heart, it will land, it will protect you, it will comfort you in the times where you feel incomplete or inadequate. I promise you, I am a living witness to that. And so we ain't gonna get out of here without us doing another dance, a feel-good dance. Is everybody ready? I wish I could just see your hands. Okay, I'm just gonna imagine that you say, yeah. All right, okay. All right, so we're gonna do one more song. Because if I was on stage, this is what we would be doing. Oh, good. Y'all ready? Y'all ready to start loving on yourselves? To start manifesting this stuff? Are y'all ready? Okay, that's enough. Here we go. I know y'all. I can imagine you dancing with me. Ha ha! Thank you, Aisha, for this opportunity. And this was stage fright. Come on, if I can do this, you can do that. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey. All right, I don't want to take up too much of my time.
Do your thing, girl. Do it, girl.
Woo! Hey! Hi, 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 hi. Man, I love y'all. This was awesome. Stop trying to figure out what other people think about you. It is not your business. It ain't your fault that favor was put upon your life. Walk in it. We've had enough times of sadness. This is time now to understand that your contribution is necessary. We need you. Let's go. I can't breathe.
That was amazing. Oh my God. I got my whole entire life. I have been convicted.
Come on.
We're talking directly to me. And I know all these other amazing sweat sisters felt the same. Thank you so much for sharing your passion, your infectious energy, and just being you, because this is what we need. We need to build it up, especially in a time like this where we're trying to figure out if we're good enough. And we know at the core, we know God has a huge and amazing plan for us, but it's so hard to trust him. And it's so hard to just let him do his thing.
Yep.
Let God work for us. But
yes,
thank you for just reminding us, because sometimes we need that reminder. Thank you for reminding us that we're worthy. Thank you for letting us know that, hey, we got to just do the work.
God, do the work.
God,
and here's the thing. I just want to leave you guys with this. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Come Come on, y'all. I wish I could be out there. My mic. Come on, y'all.
Yes, God.
So let's go.
I am just, I'm blown away. I'm
Amen.
Amen. Again.
And you know, the funny thing is, I was like, Lord, what do you want me to say? This is all my notes. Y'all see all this? But I don't think I used any of this. Because sometimes you just got to take it from the heart and dig in. And so
we love every single word. Like we love every single word. And I know
thank you.
Every single person on here. And I just thank you for being a voice. Just being a person that can share what they've gone through to help so many others. So thank you for your notes, because like you didn't use them, you used everything. We had one quick question that somebody wanted to know. Let me see, where is it? It was a really great question. Okay. She said, can you explain what does it mean to lose twice? It says lose twice, twice thing again.
Sometimes circumstances may cause us to feel that we've lost. Anyway, at the end of the day, there's really no losing, but in the spirit of understanding how to recover from a circumstance, a scenario, anything in your life that did not work out the way you wanted it to. But at the same time, God there's a juxtaposition, that when something feels like a loss, God is saying, but here's a win over here. But we're so rooted in the sadness and the disappointment that we can't see the win he's trying to do over here. And so I'm just asking us to recover. It doesn't mean that we don't feel it. It just means that we have to shift our perspective in the moment to say, okay, if I know that my life is being guided, this doesn't feel good because it ain't what I wanted. So let me get back to what is the will, what was the thing he wanted, so that I can see and not miss out on this goodness. And it happened with me with going on Chasing Destiny with Kelly Rowland. Like right before I got the call with her to come and meet her, my phone died and my car broke down in front of Common's house. Right? Now, if I was anywhere else without no son, I'd be at home. Like, I'm going to bed. This day is over. We have had it. But I was like, I am going to still choose to find joy even in this moment. So it's funny because when the call came in, it was from Frank Gatson. I didn't answer it. I didn't know it was Frank. It said unknown. And I was like, I only got 2%. I need to know who that call is from. And so then he texted me and said, call me right now. And so it's like, the old me would have just been in my feelings. It would have been the self-pity of nothing ever goes right for me.
Yeah, I'm just so defeated. Yeah.
Yes. And so the new me in that was like, okay, this is a defeat, but Lord, there must be a win on the other side. So where you at? And that was Chasing Destiny.
Wow. Thank you. I'm just blown away. I thank you so much. And one thing that really stuck out to me is being committed to change. Like that is really sticking out. If something's not working, just pivot. It's okay. Yeah. It doesn't come overnight, but you got it. You just got to keep working at it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I can still network.
Yes.
I'll network with people. I can go over to the networking station. And if anybody else has any other questions. Yes. And thank you so much to the founder, Aisha Branch, for all you do and for moving forward in this vision that God gave you. So just thank you. To everyone and to the entire team and to all of the speakers today. I know that they will bring you light, and I just hope that I've done my part to just shift your spirit in a way that helps you to celebrate you now. Stop waiting for somebody else to do it. Celebrate you now.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day. Don't go anywhere. Hang out in our event chat space.
Yay. And the book is in the expo.
Yes, please get the book. I just got the book on Amazon. I just purchased my order.
Look at Jesus. Come on.
Let's support Black queens that are doing something amazing. So please go over to Amazon. It is only $14.98. Order it right now to get to your house in 2 days.
Come on. Thank you so much. You are lovely.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm moving over to networking. If anybody wants to keep chatting, I'm here.
Yes.
Bye, everybody. I see you both.